Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the San Joaquin Valley Health Fund's 7th Annual Equity on the Mall. My name is Sergio Cuellar, Senior Program Officer with the Sierra Health Foundation and the Center, and manage the San Joaquin Valley Health Fund. I have the honor of being your MC for the next 2 days as we honor and celebrate the inspiring and powerful work of our San Joaquin Valley Health Fund community partners and residents who are improving conditions, making the San Joaquin Valley a healthier and more equitable place to live. Today, we're coming live via the Hop-In Gathering technology and also streaming live on YouTube and Facebook. So before we go any further, I'd like to also do a little housekeeping. For those joining us today who may need interpreter services, we're very proud to offer live simultaneous interpretation in multiple languages. I'm going to now introduce our interpreters and allow them to take a minute to introduce themselves and share directions on how you can access the interpreter services in their language. So first, I will turn it over to our first interpreter for Spanish.
Buenos días, gracias por acompañarnos el día de hoy en Equity on the Mall 2022. Bienvenidos. Tenemos interpretación simultánea en español, Hmong, Punjabi y mandarín. Para acceder a la interpretación simultánea, por favor vaya a la esquina superior derecha de su pantalla. Debajo del área donde dice Event y Stage, verá la palabra Translations. Después verá una imagen que dice Interpretify. Dele clic en Select y elija Español. Dele clic en Connect para escuchar automáticamente su idioma de preferencia. Si tiene algún problema, por favor contáctenos dando clic en Help Desk. Si está accediendo desde Facebook o YouTube, por favor, regístrese en www.equityonthemall.org para que tenga acceso a la interpretación simultánea. Next one, Hmong.
You're on, Amina.
I'm Punjabi. Shall I go on?
Go ahead, Amina, yes.
Okay. ਹਾਂਜੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਜੀ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਸੁਨੇਹਾ ਦੇਣਾ ਚਾਹਨੀ ਆ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਬੜਾ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕਰਨੇ ਆ ਐਕੁਇਟੀ ਔਨ ਦ ਮਾਲ 2022 ਦੀ ਮੀਟਿੰਗ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਸਪੇਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਭਾਸ਼ਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇੰਟਰਪ੍ਰੀਫਾਈ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪਲੇਟਫਾਰਮ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਤਰਜਮਾ ਕਰਕੇ ਦੱਸਾਂਗੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣਾ ਟੋਕਨ ਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਅੰਦਰ ਪਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਤੇ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਅਦ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਕਿ ਸਾਰਾ ਕੁਝ ਉੱਥੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਲਫ਼ਜ਼ਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਵਿੱਚ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਹੈ ਕੋਈ ਵਿਚਕਾਰ ਕੋਈ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਛੱਡਣੀ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਲਿੱਕ ਕਰੋਗੇ ਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੇਖੋਗੇ ਕਿ ਉੱਥੇ ਆਂਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਟੂ ਮਾਈ ਸੈਸ਼ਨ ਉੱਥੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਫਿਰ ਸਿਲੈਕਟ ਕਰੋਗੇ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਭਾਸ਼ਾ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਫੇਸਬੁੱਕ ਤੇ ਵੀ ਤੇ YouTube ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਲਾਈਵ ਸਟ੍ਰੀਮ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਰਜਿਸਟਰ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ www.equityonthemall.org ਤੋਂ ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਾਰਾ ਤਰਜਮਾ ਕਰਕੇ ਦੱਸਾਂਗੇ ਤੇ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਅਦ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਬੜਾ ਵਧੀਆ ਹੋਏਗਾ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸੁਣੋ ਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਭਾਸ਼ਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਸੁਣ ਸਕੋਗੇ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਮੈਂ ਇਹ ਸੁਨੇਹਾ ਅੱਗੇ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੇਣੀ ਆ ਨੈਕਸਟ ਵਨ ਮੈਂਡਰਿਨ
感谢您今天参加2022年 Equity on the Mall， 我们欢迎您，并将提供西班牙语、苗语、旁遮普语和普通话的翻译服务。如果您需要同声翻译，请看您的电脑屏幕的右上角，在标有事件 Event 和主席台 Stage 的区域下方，您能看到 Translations 翻译，然后你将看到一个显示 Interpretify 的图像，点击选择 Select， 并选择普通话 Mandarin， 单击 Connect 连接，自动接听您的语言的同声翻译。如果您有任何问题，请单击帮助台 Help Desk 让我们知道。如果您是从脸书 Facebook 或油管 YouTube 收看，请在 www.equityonthemall.org 注册，以便您可以倾听中文同声翻译服务。Back to you, Sergio.
Thank you very much. And so again, I want to just remind folks before we move into our Hmong interpreter that again, if you want to access the services for interpreters or take part in the interactive polls, you can register at any time to join on the Hop-In platform by going to www.equityonthemall.org and clicking the Register Now button. And then we're going to go ahead and move into our next piece, which again is our land acknowledgement. We'd like to begin today in this two-day gathering by acknowledging the land on which we gather today. I'm coming to you today live from the occupied territory of the Yokuts people who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. The San Joaquin Valley is a rich valley in traditions and representation of Native American peoples and cultures. We are grateful to be in the traditional homelands of the Yokuts and Mono peoples, whose diverse tribal communities share stewardship over this land. We thank them for their strength and resilience in protecting this land and aspire to uphold the responsibilities according to their ways and the ways of all indigenous peoples who have inhabited and had their land stolen in what we now know as the San Joaquin Valley. All right, San Joaquin Valley, it's time to get the celebration started. It is my honor to introduce our first performer. Today we have with us a Pulitzer Prize finalist and Fresno State professor, Dr. Mai-Der Vang. Dr. Mai-Der Vang is the author of 2 collections of poetry. Her first book, Afterlands, received First Book Award of the Academy of American Poets, was longlisted for the National Book Award in Poetry, and a finalist of the Kate Tufts Discovery Award. Her second collection, Yellow Rain, was a finalist of the Pulitzer Prize in Poetry, the Penn Vogler Award for Poetry, and the LA Times Book Prize in Poetry, and is currently a finalist for the California Book Awards. Dr. Vang also co-edited How Do I Begin, a Hmong American literary anthology with a Hmong American Writer Circle. Born and raised in Fresno, California, she earned her degrees from the University of California, Berkeley, and Columbia University. She teaches in the MFA program in creative writing at Fresno State. Let's give a warm Valley welcome to Dr. Mai-Der Vang.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Thank you for inviting me to be here to join in solidarity with all of you for equity on the mall. And thank you also for creating space for poetry to be heard and celebrated here. It's inspiring to know that you're all gathered here today, this powerhouse of voices, of dreamers, of believers who see the potential for our community to flourish and for our world to thrive. And I just want to, before I start reading my poems, I just want to thank all of you for the work that you're doing to create, the voices that you're going to offer to be heard and to advocate for systemic changes, and ultimately to hold our elected officials accountable. And I thank you for the work that you're doing to make our world a better place. So I have 2 poems that I want to share and read for all of you this morning. And just to give a bit of quick context on the first poem, for me, I am a daughter of Hmong refugees who resettled in Fresno in the early 80s. And for my parents, for so many refugees and immigrants who had to find their way to this country, there was also the losses of the one country that was left behind. And so this first poem is a poem that explores the leaving of one country to enter a new one. Transmigration. Spirit, when I flee this jungle, you must too. I will take our silver bars, necklace dowry, and the kettle forged from metal scraps just after the last monsoon. Among the foliage, we must be ready to see the half decayed. You must not run off no matter how much flesh you smell, nor should you wander to chase an old mate. Spirit, we are in this with each other the way the night geese in migration need the stars. When I make the crossing, you must not be taken no matter what the current gives. And when we reach the camp, there will be thousands like us. If I make it onto the plain, you must follow me to the roads and waiting pastures of America. We will not ride the water today on the shoulders of buffalo as we used to many years ago, nor will we forage for the sweetest mangoes. I am refugee, you are too. Cry, but do not weep. We walk out the door. And my second and last poem here I want to share with all of you is a poem that has been imbued with my my belief in this world being better, and with it is also imbued my hope and my intentions of abundance for all of you. Look to the new moon. If you must hear the story of my turbulent gaze after waking, the march of my hours to hermit into a higher body, it is that whatever you put into the universe eventually returns. In our oneness of gift, we are eyes together, nerves together, affected together. If I've never told you how madly we share in the stars, how it was all founded for you, then let the longing for Arcturus be the gilding of our sleep. I know when your time was in its making, I was left to sing alone, unfed to trample through 100 layers of night without a heart to hold my guard. If I had known all those days to listen deep into myself so that you would begin to hear me, I'd sooner soak the decibels of your cells into the exhale of my embrace. A scorning within is within coming back to scorn. A rose quartz promise lifted into the world is the world coming back to surrender its love. Even after I took my health into a vineyard of hawks, I could not break myself from caring, but only to seek you, find you, whisper into your palm, you are not lost. You won't be lost. Thank you all so very much, and I wish you a wonderful, wonderful event.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vang. Let's give another warm Valley welcome to Dr. Maider Vang. Thank you for your poetry. We appreciate your work. We're glad that you're able to join us today. So before we get started, let's do a little roll call to see who's joining us today from across the Valley. So let's start out in the northern part of the Valley. Let's look at San Joaquin County. Do we have folks that are with us today from Stockton, Lodi, Tracy? Great. Let's start to move down a little bit and think about Stanislaus County. Our folks joining us today from Modesto, Turlock, my hometown, Patterson, California. Folks joining us there. Great. So let's think about Merced County. We have folks joining us from Merced County. Awesome. Moving down, let's go to Madera County, Fresno, Kings, Tulare, Kern counties. We hope you all are here as well. We're going to go ahead and start to move into our next section of this, and I have the honor and great privilege of introducing the first speaker to kick off The Valley is Rising. We'd like to welcome President and CEO of Sierra Health Foundation and the Center at Sierra Health Foundation, Chet Hewitt. Chet is President and CEO of the foundation and the nonprofit intermediary of the Center at Sierra Health Foundation. Over the past decade, Chet has led a bold collective impact strategy focused on promoting health, equity, and social justice in underserved communities to improve the well-being of children, youth, and families. Recognized for strategic thinking and willingness to take thoughtful risks, Chet has received national attention on an emphasis on making the foundations and the center's partnerships with local communities and public and private funders the centerpiece of both organizations and strategies. Chet, I'll turn it over to you. You're on mute, Chet. I'm going to ask you to unmute really quick.
Yeah, as much as we do this, you would think that we would always know to unmute ourselves, but thank you so much, Sergio. It is an incredible honor to be with all of you today. I would have hoped that things would have been better and we could have been on the mall in front of the Capitol as we had been over the course of many, many years. Of course, the last several did not allow us to do that, but we are as here in spirit. We are all together. And I think the reason that led to the creation of Equity of the Mall, the reasons are still as prevalent and relevant today as they were when we first got started. I want to again thank all of you for joining us today as we continue to yell loudly that the Valley is rising and demanding its share of resources and attention so that it can promote health and well-being amongst all those who call the Valley home. I'd like to take a few minutes, if I could, this morning, just for a brief moment of silence for those in Buffalo, in Orange County, and of course in Uvalde, given the tragic incidents that we have seen take place in this country over the past several weeks. So please, if you would just join me in a brief moment of silence. Thank you so much for your indulgence. You know that we at the Foundation, for us, it's always about people. It's always about community. And when we see people suffering and in pain, you know, we stand fast with them for what is right, for what is just, and for what is deserved by communities who are not affluent or who always have the kind of political presence and strategy that it actually needs to get its fair share of resources. So again, thank you for allowing me to take a few moments to recognize and be in solidarity with our brothers and sisters and our young people in particular across the country. As you know, we started Equity on the Mall 7 years ago. We started our first year, we had a couple of hundred folks show up, actually less than 100, about 75. And by the time we stopped showing up in person, we had close to 3,000 people who were showing up, driving a policy agenda that was created by communities across the Valley and meeting with public officials and elected officials and appointed officials to really push that strategy forward. We're continuing in that vein. And yes, we can be in person, but it doesn't mean that the causes that brought us to this particular work are any less than they were before. We know the Valley still has disparities that need to be addressed. Health, economic development, and opportunity, education, access to things like clean drinking water and other environmental challenges, which we are calling for the leadership of California to join with community to address. You will hear today from some of our long-term champions and partners, like Assemblyman Arambola, who will be here with us today, and others, who will talk about their work that they've been engaged in and their solidarity with us as we continue to push forward an agenda created by communities as well. As you also know, this is part of our larger I-HEAL framework: immigration, health, housing, environment, education, and land use and planning. I-HEAL, as we refer to it, led by a policy community of a number of folks who volunteered to play that leadership role, who have been doing extraordinary work. And I want to call out the members and participants of that particular committee for their steadfastness over the many years and with many challenges that we face, particularly those that have been brought forward by the pandemic. We also know that the pandemic has just exacerbated many of the things we started talking about 7 years ago, which it's unfortunate that it took that to underscore how relevant our agenda was and remains. But we know that given where we are today, that we need to fight even harder for the things that we know our communities need. I want to also say that post Equity on the Mall this year, we'll be doing some community focus groups. And I want to encourage you, as you hear from Sergio and others who will give more information of that of how that's going to roll out, to join those particular activities so that we can continue to collect the kind of information that we need to enhance and strengthen, our collective, work. Lastly, I want to call out our supporters and funders who've been part of this work for several years. The Endowment, Cal Wellness, Blue Shield, and others. And if I missed your name, I do apologize. But we know that it's not about notoriety. It's not about whose name gets called. It really is about the work that we are collectively engaged in today and that we will be engaged in tomorrow and will continue to be engaged in until the idea of equity across California is achieved. And with that, let me turn it back to you, Sergio. Let's get going. Let's have a great conference. Let's have a great couple of days together. Sierra Health Foundation Center stands fast and stands with communities, and we're looking forward to a great experience over the next several days. Sergio, back to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Chet. Appreciate you, and thank you for your leadership in this work. It is now my pleasure to introduce our next speakers. The leadership of our next two speakers have helped shepherd the San Joaquin Valley Health Fund's Policy Committee network over the last 2 years. Eileen Espejo leads the Children's Now Oral Health Project and the Children's Movement of California. Ms. Espejo leads the organization's efforts to improve oral health care quality and access for children in California. This work has included leading medical dental collaboration project in Los Angeles County to increase dental utilization among children under age 6 enrolled in Medi-Cal, and helping the state implement a pediatric oral health plan as called for by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. She has served as leader and advisory member on several national, state, and local advisory boards, including National Oral Health Connection, team leader of the Oral Health Progress Equity Network. Noe Paramo is on staff of California Rural Legal Assistance Foundation, a Sustainable Rural Communities Project co-director and legislative advocate. For 15 years, Noah has worked for California Rural Legal Assistance Incorporated at the Modesto office. Noah was the advisory committee chair for the Central Valley Policy Institute at CSU Fresno, and works to focus on social justice policy, supporting farm workers and low-income rural communities. We are grateful for your leadership and commitment to the San Joaquin Valley and its residents. Please give a warm welcome to Noah Paramo and Eileen Espejo. Eileen?
Thanks, Sergio. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Eileen Espejo, and I work for Children Now. For the past several years, I, along with Noe, have had the pleasure of co-chairing the policy committee that has worked in community and in partnership to develop the iHeal policy platform that Chet had referenced. You'll learn more about and hear about that today and tomorrow. Children Now has been fortunate to participate in the San Joaquin Valley Health Fund initiative since the beginning, I believe, and that's what supported this work. And that's been since pre-pandemic, which feels like a very long time ago. The initiative has brought partners together from the Valley and from different parts of the state to address the most pressing and critical issues facing our communities in the San Joaquin Valley today. The iHeal policy platform, immigration, health, housing, education, environmental justice, and land use and planning is our guide to what we believe the Valley requires to rise from where it currently is and to make the Valley a safe, healthy, affordable, educated, connected, pollution and pesticide-free, walkable, smart, well thought out, and community-focused, community-friendly region of California that thrives. So over today and tomorrow, you will learn more about and hear about the platform, the priorities of each of the iHeal sections as shared by policy committee and community members. I just want to recognize and shout out to the policy committee because I know I've been working very hard over the past month to bring these presentations to you. As a member of the health subcommittee, my work at Children Now has been supported by the policy committee in helping advance the pathway to make sure that children have access to mental health services in schools and promoting health coverage of pregnant women and young kids. I'm indebted to my fellow policy committee members for supporting my work and for continually teaching me about all of the issues that require our collective voice in order to improve the quality of life for the Valley. My hope is that the policy committee continues to work together to raise awareness among and across our subcommittees and to continue to engage community members and help collectively raise all of our voices across the Valley into Sacramento and beyond. There is much to do, and we in the San Joaquin Valley cannot wait. We need you, your energy, your resilience, and your dedication to keep this work moving forward. Welcome again. Thank you for being here today, for showing up, and for doing your part to keep the Valley rising. Noe, on to you.
Thank you, Eileen, for that eloquent introduction and welcome. On behalf of the San Joaquin Valley Health Fund community-based organization partners, I share my good morning and welcome to Equity on the Mall 2022. The San Joaquin Valley partners have for a decade advocated on issues impacting our communities, as is eloquently be presented through the iHeal platform. The core of the work is to promote racial and equitable policies in these key areas of immigration, health, housing, education, environmental justice, and land use. Underpinned is addressing the digital divide in our San Joaquin Valley communities. As the COVID-19 pandemic continues to impact our communities, we work to promote the health and safety of our community workers and families. Moreover, the right of our families and children to be free from the fear of gun violence that destroys lives for generations. For far too long, the San Joaquin Valley has consistently been a region where the most marginalized are communities of color and low-income migrant, immigrant farm workers, families impacted by the lack of racial and equitable policies to address the social, health, and economic issues. Together, the partners in the San Joaquin Valley Health Fund stand for common sense laws and policies that promote racial and health equity. Moreover, the right of our families to be free from this gun violence. So we will mourn with the families losing children and teachers at the Robb Elementary School tragedy in Uvalde, Texas. This is particularly close to our work because the connection of a community like Uvalde has with the San Joaquin Valley communities. Many families migrating from Texas to California to pick the crops that put food on our tables have done for generations. From the San Joaquin Valley Health Fund, the Sierra Health Foundation, partners to the community of Uvalde, Texas, a moment of silence. Thank you. It is now my honor and privilege to introduce Dr. Joaquin Arambola. Dr. Arambola was first elected in 2016 to represent the 31st Assembly District in the Central Valley. He is the first Latino physician elected to the California State Assembly. He proudly represents a district that includes 41% of the city of Fresno, as well as all the rural cities and communities of Fresno County. Dr. Arambola's experiences as an emergency room doctor in Selma in Fresno County forged his determination to improve healthcare for all people, especially the most vulnerable. He saw the emotional and financial hardships of people struggling with illnesses that could have been prevented with access to quality healthcare. Dr. Arambola believes that healthcare is a fundamental human right. Since his election, he's been a forceful advocate in addressing the dire shortage of teachers, of doctors, as well as our teachers in our community as doctors and nurses and other healthcare professionals in the Central Valley. He has authored legislation that improves the health and mental health services, but he also has been vigilant to include measures that ensure transparency regarding management of these services and their costs. In addition, Dr. Arambola is fighting to bring more water to the Central Valley by calling for the construction of the Temperance Flat Dam and Reservoir and championing legislation for groundwater recharge projects. Let's do a San Joaquin Valley Health Fund welcome to Dr. Joaquin Arambola.
Gracias, Noy. Soy un hijo del Valle Central de San Joaquín. Nací en Delano durante el movimiento de campesino y estoy orgulloso que hay bastante de nuestra gente en este momento aquí. Bienvenidos a Equity on the Mall. As someone who was born and raised in the Valley, I wanted to start in Spanish to give respect to my grandparents and elders who brought us to the central San Joaquin Valley, a place that I have called home. I am proud to see so many of our brothers and sisters from the San Joaquin Valley who are here today on Equity on the Mall. And I just wanted to say that I think I have a reason why you are here today, as it is much the same reason why I am serving in our state assembly. And that is that we want a healthier San Joaquin Valley, that we want cleaner air and to be able to drink the water that comes out of our faucets, that we want affordable places to live and to be able to see a doctor when we need to. And we all want a better future for our children. I came here today to support the work that so many of your organizations are doing, because your advocacy and tireless work has shown how we can accomplish this. Over the last year, I have seen as you've held dozens of vaccination clinics and food drives in what was the pandemic of the century. I've seen how you have aided communities who lack access to green space or who've had their wells run dry. And I am working with you towards a future where we will have finally equity for our communities, where we can bring healthcare to our immigrant brothers and sisters, where we can address the evils of labor trafficking, and where we can clean up our air. Yes, the valley is rising, and I stand in solidarity with you as we fight for equity. Together, we will make this a California that is a golden state for all. For Tulare, for Kern, for Stockton, and for Fresno, and for every other community and neighborhood in the valley, I stand with you to say welcome. Bienvenidos a Equity on the Mall, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Arambola, for all your work and your leadership in the Valley. We really, really appreciate it and are grateful to have you with us today, as you've been a great supporter of this work for many, many years. So thanks again, everybody, for joining us for the opening rally. A little bit of context here. For those of us who have joined over the last 7 years, Equity on the Mall, was started out with only a couple hundred people. And in fact, we heard Chet say it was about 75 people that we brought to the steps of the state capitol. And over the year, we have been able to grow this program to bring thousands of San Joaquin Valley residents, young and old, to Sacramento to share with our elected officials the voices of the San Joaquin Valley, uplifting the needs and bringing with us the solutions to make the San Joaquin Valley a healthier and more equitable place to live. Over the last 2 years, as mentioned, while navigating the global COVID-19 pandemic, our community partners have pivoted to meet the needs of the communities and residents they serve, and still have shown up to do this work together and together create the I Heal policy platform, which shares the challenges the Valley faces when it comes to the issues of immigration, health, housing, education, environmental justice, land use, planning, and the digital divide. Through the years, we have been able to build a network of over 40 philanthropic partners to raise over $30 million in supporting over 170 San Joaquin Valley community partners to advocate for the needs of the San Joaquin Valley. Equity on the Mall 2022 will continue to build that tradition of gathering Valley residents together, though in a virtual space, sharing the work of our powerful community partners who make up the San Joaquin Valley Health Fund, the Policy Committee Network, and really raise up and challenging our elected officials and leaders to join us and our community partners and residents in delivering the solutions the Valley needs and deserves. Over the next 2 days, you will hear from our Policy Committee members, Valley residents, issue-specific experts, state representatives, and young elected officials from the San Joaquin Valley as they share the power of community in the San Joaquin Valley, but more importantly, their vision for a healthier and more equitable San Joaquin Valley. So now we have the opportunity to take a look back at previous Equity in the Mall gatherings through a video that we'd like to share.
The Valley is here, and the Valley is rising. This is about opportunity. This is about the things that every Californian in the greatest state in this nation deserves to have.
The time of Central Valley is now.
"264 miles from Arvin all the way up to Lodi, California, in this valley that has created bounty, that has created profits, that has created goods for the entire world. But what it has not created is equity. We come with that message that we want equity for all, and that begins with equity on the mall."
Today is one step, but it's not enough to have equity on the mall if you don't have equity on your school boards. It's not enough to have equity on the mall if you don't have equity in your police department. It's not enough to have equity on the mall if you don't have equity on your board of supervisors, on your city council, and on all the institutional leaders who represent you and your community's interests.
We matter. Every single one of us matters. And the fact that you're here shows that you care enough to take the time out of your life to come and insist that we listen to you. And so thank you for taking the time that you need to come here and have your voices be heard.
From the north all the way down to the south, through Bakersfield and further south, to stand here and say that our communities demand the same investment and an equal shot at every community around the state. Are you with me on that?
So we know that we want to stop that school to prison pipeline. We want safe drinking water without poisons. We want to make sure that the money that goes to our school district is spent for low-income children, English learners, and foster children.
But today, the most powerful voices are here on the board. Today, the most powerful voices are your voices. So we are here, aligned, organized, as one to make that happen.
Great, welcome back, everybody. So before we get started, I just want to give a quick overview of the next couple of days for folks. Over the next 2 days, again, you've already heard from our elected officials and our policy committee members, but you're also going to be hearing from our community partners who have been working tirelessly on the ground, but also a part of our policy committee to put together this event, but also to put together a platform that really speaks to the voices of the San Joaquin Valley, and that is the iHeal Policy Platform. Over the next 2 days, you're going to hear from our Education Policy Subcommittee, who's going to be talking about the issues that students are facing in our San Joaquin Valley schools. We'll also hear from our Housing and Land Use and Planning Subcommittees as they talk about the importance of being able to grow and create affordable housing and compact growth. We also understand now even more so the issues of the digital divide. Over the last decade, we've known that we've lacked the infrastructure for high quality, affordable internet access for the San Joaquin Valley. And during the global pandemic, those issues became even much greater as we all started to work from home and remotely and started to also get educated at home as well. That digital divide has caused even more issues for our young people who, again, don't have that quality access and who are now behind in schools and in education. You'll hear from those folks as we speak today. You also hear today in a special panel from our young elected officials in the San Joaquin Valley. We're very proud to uplift the voices of our young elected officials who are serving in either a county board of supervisors seat, local city council seats, and are doing the work and their part to uplift their communities and bring equity back into their own homes and communities as well.